Hello and welcome to the Harry Man Show number 56. Today we have a special guest from one of the biggest drum podcasts in the world, Seamus Evely. He's got over 200 episodes on all platforms. Check him on Apple, YouTube, etc. What's up, Seamus?
Oh, well, just chilling, Dustin. It's nice to be on your show today, and
Yeah.
thanks so much for inviting me here. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, like I said, you're someone I look up to. Like I said, pre-show, like it's just really cool what you're doing, and I like to follow in your footsteps with all that stuff too as well.
Be careful where you follow, my friend.
So
tread with caution.
Yeah. So going into it, how did Drumeo start before you merged with the actual company, Drumeo Gab?
So how did Drum Gab start?
Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
So I guess the short version of that is I applied for. I submitted a video, a drum solo video. It was for the Victoria Drum Festival. Murray Creed puts that on, and so anyways, that particular year, and I think maybe the year following. I don't know. I saw it on Facebook of all things, and I saw it. I'm like, hey, that's kind of interesting. Drumeo's. I thought it was actually a Drumeo thing. I didn't know that it was Victoria Drum Festival, but they had put together like a marketing campaign to get the word out, have Canadian drummers submit a roughly 3-minute long solo. And, I guess, what was it? 2 people were selected, would be selected to go to Victoria, and then they would perform on a bill with, like just to give you an idea, like the last time I went, Keith Carlock, Brian Fraser-Moore, Sarah Thawer, they're all there. Who's the other?
Well, just to mention, I watched your solo. It's very dynamic and really cool, though.
Oh, well, so I appreciate that, dude. I mean, I don't, even to this day, I was never really interested in soloing, to be honest. It always felt like anytime it was my turn to solo, it felt really like I don't really feel comfortable having that much attention placed upon me. And it kind of, I always felt drums were this, it was kind of like the silent leader, that the instrument that really is driving the bus, but, you don't have to talk about it. That's why I like drums. They're subtle in some way, and they're also very powerful. I feel like they kind of speak to both things. So the idea of soloing was not something I was ever really that interested in. I was more interested in song drumming and parts and repertoire and things like that. But I thought, hey, you know what, this is kind of neat. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I just saw it and I became inspired. So that then led to being motivated, which then led to 3 weeks in the woodshed, just thwapping away on a pad, which is very unusual for me to do. I never really did much of that. So I figured, hey, this is kind of cool. Made a video. Actually, I called up the studio and I says to Kyle Ashbourne, the guy who was engineering everything, it's like, hey man, like gonna do a solo. How much? I need you just to record it at Emacs. So he says, well, $500 is about what it is. So I was like, cool, let's do it. My wife is cool. She let me throw down that much money to make a video with no certainty of me, winning or whatever, being able to go and do that. Anyways, through the course of that, I became close friends with a few people. And Rob Ryan was the person. I haven't spoke to him in a long time at this point. Not sure what he's up to these days, but he was suggesting to me, he was one of the participants as well, hey, you should get into a blog. I'm like, all right, cool. I think I know what that is. Started writing articles, and then he came back maybe a couple months later and suggested I do a podcast. I'm like, okay, I know about Joe Rogan and whatnot. Don't really know anything more than that, but I don't know. It's just kind of in this mode in life where something new just seemed interesting. And I wanted to sort of break out of my normal habit and routine of seeing something and never acting on it. So it was sort of this awakening to making decisions and actually committing to things that I wouldn't consider myself to be, but more in this thought, well, what could I become? And I felt really stagnant, more or less, in life at that point. And I really felt like I also needed something for me. I was always trying to get bands together or trying to jam with people, and it was always sort of at the mercy of those people. And then things just never really quite worked out. And it was beginning to frustrate me a lot because I wanted to put out some kind of thing creatively that had something to do with. So podcasting seemed great because, more or less you're 90% of what it is, in my opinion. Like you schedule, you come up with questions, you research, you record it, you edit it, you promote it, your creative ideas in terms of production. It's your voice, creatively speaking, and you need someone to talk to. So they sort of fill in the rest, I guess. And so I like that. It wasn't a lot to, it's just not like you needed like 3 or 4 other people to make something happen. You just needed one other person, or worst comes to worst, you could just talk.
Yeah.
So anyways, just kind of started doing it. Next thing you know, kind of discovered I liked it a lot. And it also pushed me well outside of my comfort zones. And I made 100 episodes. By around episode, I don't know, 70 or something like that, Jared got in touch with me and wished to collaborate. And that really excited me because at that point it was starting to feel like, we talked about this a little bit, it didn't really ever feel like work at that point, but it also felt like a lot of commitment to something. And the only way I could really seem to feel satisfied doing it is when I'd spend 15, 20 hours on an episode. Yeah. It's just like this neurotic thing where it's like, it's not done yet. It's not done yet. It needs a couple of tweaks. And like, in order to reach satisfaction, and it probably had a lot to do with insecurity, it's like, okay, did I polish enough of the flaws out of it or something? I was very hard on myself.
Yeah.
And, it's just hard to convince your wife, in my case, to continue doing this for free. Because as you know, hardly any of us podcasters make any money at doing this. And it's just such a hard thing to get to a place where, well, I mean, half of the podcasters that do publish stuff get under 200 downloads. Like,
yeah,
that's the facts, right? I mean, to get enough downloads to make money, you're looking at top. You can't even talk about money really until you're in the top 5-6%. And I realized that for a couple of reasons. It's like, okay, well, Drumeo, in theory, that should add some more clout to the brand because now we have an established, respected brand attached to my little homebrew thing that I came up with. I thought maybe that would be that was sort of help charge up the show in terms of how it would be perceived, because I realized it's like anything. It's like, here's some information. It means nothing to nobody until we know who said it.
Yeah.
And then it's the who said it, who done it, that brings validity to anyone. So I figured Drumeo Gab, when you see that, when you're browsing around looking for a podcast to listen to, people would likely know that name and think, oh, this must not suck because it has Drumeo in front of it. So I thought that would be a good thing. The other thing is that, of course, then it would allow me to earn a small living, to earn a little bit of money. So just enough really so that it didn't feel, it's just a lot easier to commit more to it, get more into it. And of course, my wife was happy about that because it was a pretty serious hobby.
Yeah, it is.
So that was good. And so anyways, I told Jared, yeah, sure, that sounds amazing. And thank you so much. And, but I got to make 100 under Drum Gab before I do anything else, because I felt like Drum Gab wasn't quite complete until I did my 100th. And I don't know if you ever, not a lot of people listen to the whole thing, but it was 11 hours and 11 minutes long. And I edited most of it in the hospital room with my son. So it was kind of a special episode. Obviously, only 3% of people listen to the whole thing, according to my stats.
Yeah.
But some people actually listen to the whole thing, which really blew me away. So that's kind of how it transitioned from Drum Gab to Drumeo Gab.
So I kind of want to take it back to the grassroots. When you first started, were you kind of just knocking on doors for guests, or was it kind of an easy thing to get people in?
Nah, it was totally cold start every time. It felt like the guy handed out pamphlets that you don't want him on your doorstep. It's like, who's this guy? You want me to be on your what again?
I know how it feels, man.
Yeah, so it was a lot of just reaching out over Instagram initially. Just kind of like what you're doing, man. You hit me up the one day, hey, man, you want to talk drums and shit? And I says, yeah, let's do it. I love talking about that. So that's kind of what I was doing too, just the same sort of idea. And then, of course, as you do more, you get more guests. The word goes around. It's like a small town, this community. So, word travels quick. And next thing you know, it's not as much of a challenge to get bigger guests to cooperate with your request.
Top shelf stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you feel like the networking and the relationship built are worth more than the currency developed through it? Does that I see that being a bigger positive in the long run?
Sorry, the networking and the relationships being greater than what?
The actual money you're making. Do you feel like there's more value there than that?
Yeah, so that's interesting because yes, I do think that the relationships are certainly more important than anything else. But money is a tool, and money. Yeah, I don't know, man. I have this love-hate relationship with digital content. I got to be honest. Yeah, I feel like it's incredibly undervalued. I feel like there's so much of it that no one really values it. It's like the kid who gets 50 toys on Christmas and doesn't like any of them because he's got too much shit.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is with this stuff. So I feel like you got to give yourself away too much to gain a little. And I think it's completely out of balance. And I think it's very hard to stand out. And, it can be soul destroying for some people who really have an idea or like a desire to create something that's recognized, and then it never happens. Like it happens to a ton of people. Like, how many episodes have you made?
50. This will be number 56.
Congratulations. You are among very few that managed to do that. Podcast fade. Yeah. Podcast fade is huge, man. Like most people don't make 15.
Yeah. I think 20 is like the kind of where everyone's like, oh, you know what I mean? But with that being said, it's kind of a downer question, but with the pandemic, do you feel like the podcasting thing got saturated just in every
subject? My God. Yeah. I mean, Mike Dolbear threw a statistic at me when I chatted with him with Dave and Jared. And I was like, really? That many shows popped up? And I can't remember the exact number, but I do know that from 2019 to 2020, or sorry, no, that's not correct. The year of 2020, at the start of the year, there was roughly somewhere in around between 800 and 900,000 shows. Mm-hmm. In a single year, that went up to 1.7 million. So it's a huge set. Dude, everybody's sitting at home.
Yeah.
Being responsible, right? And so what else are you going to do? Podcasting is a lot of fun, and I can see the allure because what I'm seeing more of in terms of shows, like you're an exception. You're kind of like a dude who just thought, hey, this is kind of a cool idea. I'm going to start something. But a lot of times it's existing brands and individuals who are already deep into the industry who have the hookups and the connections. Yeah. And I can think of a few people like Sarah Hagen, for example, has her podcast. She's been in the industry for nearly 20 years and working with Zildjian. Then, of course, that happened. And then now she's trying to forge her own thing. From what I understand, it's kind of like a, what do you call it? Consulting business type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Right. So like she can have Gavin Harrison on episode 1 or 2 or whatever it was. And like, not a lot of us, like, I know you and I kind of come from the same sort of concept in terms of building a show. That's way outside of it. That's even still hard for me. Some 200 episodes later to get in touch with him. So, I feel anyways, that podcasting is the perfect platform if you got the balls to be transparent and honest with people. And, this is where you create and establish more relationships, more listener appreciation or brand appreciation. So it's good to heighten the sense of connectivity that a person may have with a brand. I think podcasting is the best medium available, to be quite honest with you, in terms of, I have a brand and I want you to like it even more. Podcasting makes sense, but it's difficult, as you know, to dream up a name for your show and then come up with a bit of artwork and then book your first guest and then do it like 100 more times. Like that's not easy.
Yeah, it's very routine and kind of like you said, it takes balls. It sounds easy, but really putting yourself out there is more difficult than it sounds.
Dude, I don't know. Here, let me ask you something. Are you still trying to figure out your voice?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
It took me about 80 episodes to figure mine out.
Yeah, I think structurally, I try to put together. I don't want it to sound so scripted, but more of a free flow. Not so penned to or just in general trying to fanboy out on people half the time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's once you get to a point where you don't care what anyone thinks of you, then you found your voice.
Yeah, I think I'm getting there. I think I walked in, but I haven't sat down yet.
Yeah. Because that's the trick, right? You have to
Yeah.
be comfortable in your own skin to the point where you're never questioning your worth towards someone else's that you may have a fanboy, quote unquote, sort of feeling towards, because it's easy for you to reflect against your guest.
Yeah.
And I think that happens to everybody.
Now,
honestly.
this is a silly question, but how long did it take you to listen to your own show?
Well, I'll be okay. So here's the thing with that. Okay. So
Yeah.
I have a firm belief in self-obsession when it comes to work.
Yeah.
I think you have to listen to your own stuff in order to learn from it so that you can get better. I think that's essential.
Yeah.
However, I think the question here is how long did it take for me not to cringe hearing my own voice?
That's what I meant.
Yeah. And it took a while, my friend. That's
like
literally I'd be sitting there with headphones editing and my wife would be in the living room with me and I couldn't have her hear it.
Yeah. I get so mad at myself. I was like, why did I ask that? Like, why
I know. The magnifying glass is like so intense. Just with the self-criticism of, oh, what did I say? Or the worst feeling for me, and I still get hit with this a little bit, which in all honesty, that's sort of like, that's a good, like eustress response to like podcast preparation, where it's like, okay, it's really important that I show up prepared. Like I'm all about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what started that for me was the fear of not knowing what to say when the other person is clearly finished talking.
Yeah. You got to be 2 steps ahead, just thinking like, what am I going to ask? What am I going to listen to?
Yeah.
And then they answer your question ahead of time. You're like, oops. So
yeah, I know.
I feel that pain, but yeah. I don't want to get too caught up on that, but I kind of want to talk about your drumming because you're a fantastic drummer too. When did the playing start for you?
Oh, geez. I guess I was like 3. I got a junior kit from my grandma for Christmas one year. I was living in a 3-story walk-up, so that didn't last long. You literally jam every single pillow and blanket imaginable into those things. There was still too much, so that got shelved pretty quick. But then I guess it would have been junior high when I would sneak into the music room and play drums during recess till I got kicked out. And then I was doing that a lot. And anytime there was a snow day at high school, I'd just go to the school and play drums all day. And that was pretty abundantly clear that I had an interest for it. So yeah, man, I'd say probably around 13 years old is kind of when things started.
Mm-hmm.
Like really started.
Now I know you're part of a big education network now. Was that pushed on you right away? Or were you just kind of hammering it out in the garage kind of mentality?
Oh, dude, I was just, and I still am largely just a field guy. I just like playing. I love music, man. This is why like drummy stuff doesn't really appeal to me a great deal because I feel like there are certain things that you absolutely must know in order to be competent on the instrument, but there is a lot of extras that only us drummers will ever care about, and even I don't to a large degree. I think that musical choices, decision making, understanding repertoire, knowing dynamics, knowing how to communicate, getting out of your own little like drum bubble, and listening to other people, that interests me far more. I'd rather hear a song feel and sound great than my own drumming, being impressed with it. Like I don't care about that.
Yeah, and does that go as far as watching yourself play? Was that a struggle at first, or do you feel like that was important to listen for most drummers to listen to self and watch themselves?
Yeah, I think you need to so that you know if you sound any good. I had some pressure zone mics my dad gave me. He was an audio engineer when I was a kid, and so he had some shit lying around, and he gave me some of it. And so when I first started playing, man, I used to set those things up just to hear how I sounded. But what provoked it was wanting to hear myself play, thinking it sounded good.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I'm like, oh, behind the kid on this throne, I'm sounding pretty good. Certainly I was sounding better than I did 6-7 months ago when I first got the kit. Mm-hmm. And wow, what a brutal realization that was to hear myself. And it's just like my time sucked. My dynamics were like completely like off. And there was no intention behind it. It was very sloppy, and it just wasn't happening, right? But again, man, if you're disillusioned by yourself because you've never heard yourself for real, you better get on board with that, because listening to yourself, watching yourself is fine. Really, you just need to hear yourself, I think. That's crucial. Like, you have to.
Now, as your interviews have progressed, do you feel like it's made you a better drummer too, kind of getting enlightened by these top shelf drummers as well?
Hugely. And this is why, like, I feel good about making it, because I know how much it's helped me. And I would imagine, man, that like the way that I felt about drumming before I started the podcast, or about my own drumming, is maybe more or less the majority of how most people would feel if they weren't subjected to a lot of content, say. Because again, like, I'm pre-YouTube, man. I never used YouTube to learn how to play drums. I just listened to a lot of music, and I played a lot because I loved playing. And over time, it eventually got better, you know?
Yeah.
But, I don't know. It's, I totally lost my train of thought there.
Oh, sorry, that was a big question. But what I was asking was there certain guests that stood out to you to kind of give you a different mentality sitting behind the kit?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So that's where I was going with that. Yeah. So, I've learned a lot about what matters from my guests. I think that this sort of wondering in my mind, am I a good player or not? Probably before making the show was more about the drummy stuff, you know, like how many rudiments do I know? Like, how fast can I play? How hard can I hit? Can I do stick tricks? Can I, whatever, you know, like that kind of stuff that bears very little meaning to quality drumming. I think now when I approach the bandstand, which I haven't really done a lot of, truthfully, but the times where I have, when I walk up, dude, I can play 4 on the floor if it needs it, with a lot of intention, and know that's all I really need to do, and just spice things up in certain little areas, kind of give it a little bit more sauce in certain spots. But like, I don't ever feel like unsatisfied until I pulled out that lick I wanted to throw in there for my own selfish reasons. I think that they cleared up a lot. And also too, like, understanding what the band thinks of my playing too. You know, I think I was a little bit out to lunch before making the show in regards to what I thought was actually appreciated. And I think, just a lot more confident in the role and what I need to do.
Yeah. And the one thing I find myself doing is learning a lot of the catalog before I have a guest on. Did that really help your practice regimen? Do you like go find yourself learning their songs or sitting like them or anything like that before having them on your show?
Yeah. So in some cases, it's artists that I've been listening to for a long time, which adds to how interested I am in the first place about the chat. I think, again, like when I look at what they do, I see how they perform. When do they decide to elevate the performance or add that sauce that I, typically am really looking for? It's all about perception and mentality. For me, what I look at, not specifically what they do drum wise, but why they did it, and maybe when they chose to do it, how they go about playing their groove to give it that feeling that's like, oh, I like that. Oh, why is that so good? And it's like, but it's not that complicated, but there's something about it that's just really happening. And so trying to look at those details, there's lots of drummers that I admire for the reason, like, that's why I like them, because they do things that way. Not so much about, wow, they're not even human, man. Did you see that, what they did? And it's like, I'm not interested in the athletics of it or the speed, things like that. That doesn't really interest me a whole lot, but it's more about intensity, attitude, delivery, intention, dynamics, choices, how they make something feel. Like, those things really appeal to me.
Well, it is a different language, really, when you're watching someone speak a different language when you watch them play drums. That's the way I've always seen it. But I want to talk gear. You currently play Sugarland Drums. Is that your company?
Oh, Sugar Percussion.
Sugar Percussion. Okay.
Yeah,
How long
Jefferson stuff.
Yeah, how long you been with that company?
Well, I'm not with them. I'm not endorsed by anybody.
Oh,
And this is sort of an interesting thing. It's like, I'm not. See, so when I was Drum Gab, it was kind of turned into a joke at the flower shop because that's where everything got sent because I was still living above it. So it was like an apartment I was living at the time. And it was starting to become kind of a joke around the shop where it's like, oh, we got more mail for Seamus. I received a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate to have received a lot of things. And in exchange, it was, obviously they want me to talk about these things. How did I like it? Did I like it or not? And then in the meanwhile, I'm starting to become friends with these people. And so I'm not endorsed by anybody at all, but I do have some really good relationships with a lot of different people in the industry. And Jefferson at Sugar Percussion is one of them. So specifically what I have of his is an absolutely stunning mahogany kit. It's 12, 14, 20, mahogany snare 14, and then 14 by 5.5, and then a 14 by 6.5 Alaskan cedar. And then I just ordered up one of his aluminum guys. Oh, nice. So that's a 14 by 5.5, which is just incredible. I'm starting to think that might be my favorite one. It's just like, wow, what a great sounding drum.
Yeah.
But yeah, his stuff is just awesome. And I think like moreover, I think what it is again, like drums are drums in my opinion to some degree. Mind you, I think his drums, I've always liked Amish furniture. Like if you look at my table that I'm on right now, like this was built by one person. This is like real furniture, like that will last way longer than I'll be alive. And I like shit like that. I like things to be understated, raw, simple, and effective. And I don't like a lot of frills and things like that. I like my stuff to be simple but elegant, and his stuff is like that. You look at it from a distance, you're like, oh shit, that's a nice drum set. And then you get up to it and you start feeling like, dude, you put your finger over the logo where he's like put his what is it, bloodwood and mother of pearl for the symbol. And then you rub your finger over the logo that he has in there, and like you feel how he sanded down the hole that he's kind of bored out to put in the logo, and it's like it's so perfect. It's like those sorts of details. You feel his bearing edges, and it's like that's just amazing. I mean, and then I went to a snare building workshop, so I actually got to see how neurotic this guy is and what he expects of people in terms of like, are you going to make something nice or not? Like he really pushes that. I mean, he realizes not everybody is going to be as interested in doing that. It's like, oh, it's good enough is definitely a mentality that exists. His thought is it ain't done until it's damn near perfect.
Yeah.
And you should want that. Like you should want the best thing you can make, do the best you can. And if you don't, well, maybe this will reform some people by doing this workshop, perhaps. I don't know, but that's what I gathered from it anyways. The level of detail that goes into these drums it's incredible, and there's a real family dynamic happening there between him and Noah, and, the people who play their drums. I'm friends with a lot of those people too. And yeah, it's just really cool, man. And again, like he's kind of anti-endorsement, and, that's sort of his whole thing where it's like, yeah, I don't really I endorse people in a sense, like, yeah, I like them or I don't.
Well, let me ask you, not, yeah. Do you feel like there's a big misconception of what the word endorsement means nowadays with like Instagram and TikTok? Everyone's just trying to get a niche in the belt kind of thing.
Yes and no. I think that by and large, a lot of people are totally aware of the brag piece that they're working towards. Like, I mean, we all know that. We see people, especially during the lockdowns or the pandemic or whatever, people are getting signed like 90. Vic Firth and Peisty. Yeah. I saw a joke floating around. They don't even know who they're endorsing anymore because they're putting the wrong names on the artist spotlights and stuff. It's like, do you even know who you're endorsing? You've endorsed so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way I see it, it's like this. All right, so if you're home right now, say, and I get it, like you could get signed, right, and you become a whatever artist. And then when you need support when you're on the road, then great. A lot of the people that are signing, man, have more engagement than the companies. Like you go over to Vic Firth and you look at their sticks or their page, mm-hmm. and they have a lot of people following them, but like people don't really engage with those pages very much by comparison of how many people are actually following.
Yeah.
Take like Grayson DeKruitman for an example. Okay, like that guy on average gets like 600 comments per video he posts because the guy's killing.
Yeah.
He's just an incredible musician. Mm-hmm. And, I don't think that Vic Firth can come close to matching that and offer that to him in return. So hopefully people start playing music again, and he actually needs their support for things. Yeah. Because honestly, like, I don't know, like the whole point of being endorsed, in my estimation, is to have support in relationships.
Yeah, that's what I go for too.
Right? Like, that's kind of the point. But I can see, and it's just like this thing where it's like, I became endorsed. I can't wait to make my post on Facebook or whatever so I can get a bunch of people, congratulating me, because it does feel good. I'm not denying it does. It does. It does feel good, right? To be able to tell people good news.
Yeah, it does.
It's great. And endorsements is just one of those. It's like a rite of passage to have a bunch of people telling you how awesome you are. And that's fine. But like, it's like, what's the meaning of an endorsement when everybody's in their basement? Like, what does the endorsement provide?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Is it reposts that do very little in my opinion? Like, I don't know, man. But again, if you're on tour, you're doing clinics, you're doing what people were doing before everyone got locked in their houses. At least it's like that here in Canada. I don't know why you need an endorsement. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you going to do with it?
Now, since we're on that subject, how do you think media has changed for you and for everyone around you since the pandemic? Do you think it's helped or saturated it?
Well, it's super saturated. It already was. And like I was saying before, like this...
it's kind of a Netflix mentality where you get on there and you don't even know what to watch.
Well, there's just so much coming at you, man. It's really hard to to really fully absorb what anyone's creating. Mm-hmm. And anybody who listens to, say, my podcast and is excited about the episodes and have heard everything and even tells me, I'm listening to that for the third time, like, thank you.
Yeah.
If you're listening, thank you, because that is so much that's so much more than I could ever expect from the short attention spans of a potential audience anymore. Mm-hmm. There's just too many options. There's too much. Like, anytime there's too much, you cannot squeeze all of the value and the thing that it is and what it can offer you to its entirety. Like, it's almost impossible. Yeah. And of course, because there's the mindset of publish or perish, it's like people just keep hitting the publish button. It's like, I got to stay relevant. And I got to be honest, man, like, it's I've seen folks that before the whole Corona thing happened, their perceived value was through the roof. Mm-hmm. It's just like, wow, like, you got basement drummers, and then you got like people who gig locally, and you have the clinicians and the educators at different varying degrees of popularity, and then you have like your A-listers, and you have your legends, and you have like these people are up and coming at a rapid rate. And it's like, wow, you kind of sit here and you look at it and it's like, whoa, like, that's so rad. I want that. And so like, I feel like there was more of that happening before, where it's like, there's sort of like this fanfare born out of envy in a sense. And that also keeps people pushing forward as well. Like, I don't know what morale is like right now. I mean, everybody seems to be fine. Yeah. When someone asks you how you're doing, what's the answer?
Fine.
Yeah, I'm good. Even if it's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
So like, I kind of feel like everybody's sort of more on an even playing field, and they're trying to figure out how to make this thing work.
Yeah.
And, you might have legends that are just so not into tech. Like, they might, like, I've interviewed a bunch of them, and they tend to be like the ones who are least interested in technology. Like, I don't know if I want to...
that keeps their mystique. You know what I mean? That kind of keeps them in that, like, legendary bracket. You know what I mean? But at the same time,
I know.
It's a downfall at the same time, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's even an option. I mean, like, you see, there's been so many drummers now where it's like, they never ever had to think about teaching remotely over Zoom before, man. And now it's like that's like one of their lifelines, and they're into this rat race of diversifying and creating multiple revenue streams. And you see this, and it's like, yeah, I mean, like, there's a vulnerability with that because everybody's able to do it, so that lowers the barrier of entry.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of great drummers, man. There's tons.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But still, like, for an example, I just saw Hudson Music just came out with Gadaments, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone's gonna go bananas over that. And nothing, like, I love Steve Gadd, man. He's one of my favorite drummers. But of course, if there's a Steve Gadd book now, I wonder why it's now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because he could come out with something, and I'm not knocking nobody, all right? Like, don't take this the wrong way, who's listening, but, like, of course, if he comes out with something like that, everyone's going to jump on it. Mm-hmm. Like, but meanwhile, I've interviewed many drummers who are relatively to Steve Gadd. Again, no offense, but they're pretty much a nobody, but they're great.
Yeah,
and they have products too. They have things to offer, and no one will ever look at it because of who they aren't.
Yeah, I agree. So if I were to jump into your show, not know anything, what would be the key episodes you would recommend going into from episode 1 to current? If there was like a top 3, you're like, you need to check these out before you listen to the whole thing.
Yeah. I was always really partial to the Ralph Roll episode of the Drum Gab era. Like, I love that one. To this day, that's one of those ones, like, man, am I ever glad I got to make that. Just such a great story, very emotional towards the ending there. Funny as hell at times when we're talking about cookies and stuff. Like, it's that one really stands out to me a lot. And I know that there's others that I'm not thinking of right now that I know I really like, but I guess this is all about what comes to mind, and that one really does. Like, I really love that episode. And then I guess I'm really proud of this Benny Greb series.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I really love that. I mean, I'm really glad I made it. And again, like, Benny, and I made a video about this, but I know everybody out there online, you want everybody to like you and endorse your wares, right? And that's why you guys make content, so that people know about what you do and the services you offer and the things you provide people with. Mm-hmm. And you want people to like you and to favor your thing over someone else's. I know it's like we're all in it together or whatever, and we don't want to seem competitive because drummers aren't like that, apparently, but they are. We're human beings.
Yeah, they are.
And everybody has to pay a mortgage, and everybody's got car payments. So
yeah.
You can't tell me otherwise there. But I gotta say, man, like, that guy is legit, man. Benny is such a great guy. Whoever's listened to that Benny Greb series, kind of ended on not a weird note, but it was a little bit sweet and sour. And he called me to ask me and talk to me about it. And that's amazing. And just like the Growing Pains episode that I made before that, where I kind of had this paradigm shift in how I viewed all of this and myself, and it was a huge episode for just my own personal growth. He approached me at NAMM about that, talked to me about it, and wanted to make sure it had nothing to do with what he had said to me, that it was like, what was that about? And I talked to him about it, and he respected it. He understood too. Mm-hmm. So I feel very, very good about that one. Like, on the morale level, and who I put that much effort into it. And to have that level of appreciation and just good intentions reflected back to me it left me feeling very full. Mm-hmm. An episode that starts airing this Sunday, it's 2 episodes I made with Jason Mills, I'm very happy with. It's kind of my first stab, somewhat. I guess Benny Greb's is kind of like this too, but it's more of an audio documentary. I made it months ago at this point, and I'm very happy with it. I mean, I made that at a time where I had the energy to do something like that, and I'm just, again, very happy that I made it. But the thing is about my show, Some of my VIPs are some of my favorites because I think I took a lot more risks with that, publishing things that were incredibly sensitive to me. It's just like more sensitive content, it's just really real stuff. Kind of, the first summer of the virus and sort of a lot of thoughts going through my head. And it was sort of a weird summer and I recorded a lot of my thoughts about it. And I knew that only my diehards would listen to it. So I felt very liberated to really open up dialogue there. But I wouldn't start there. That's kind of like if you've been listening to me for a while and you really want to kind of get to know exactly who I am. I basically told everybody what's going on with me. So I like that stuff. I mean, I like it all for different reasons, but it's hard for me to point anyone in any kind of specific direction.
I'm sorry to ask that question, but I just want people to get pushed into your show as well. I want them to.
No, I appreciate that. It's really nice of you to do that.
Understand what you're doing is huge. I think it's awesome.
Well, thanks.
Well, with that being said, I'm Seamus. I think we should do this again some other time. I don't want to keep you too long here, but yeah, I feel enlightened. You kind of taught me a lot and things I needed to hear myself. But thank you very much for coming on.
I really appreciate it, man. And keep doing the great work you're doing. Podcasting is not easy. It's not glamorous. It's a lot of isolation and solitude, and you kind of live with it by yourself. And it can be difficult sometimes to feel appreciated for the work that you're doing, because a lot of times people don't even really understand what it is you're doing.
It takes a lot of brain power to sit there and think about a guest for a week and listen to all the stuff. And it's fun though. As long as it's fun, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, well, good for you, pal. And it is fun. It's a really great thing. I'm glad I found it, and very thankful for you to have invited me onto your show today, buddy.
All right. Well, we'll talk soon there. Thank you.